Today's episode contains references to sexual assault that you might find upsetting. If you prefer not to listen, then feel free to come back another day. Here's a multiple choice question. What do you think of this one? If you believe you've been sexually assaulted at uni, what do you do? Do you go to the police? Report it to your university? Or would you out the person you think did it on social media, posting a picture of them on Twitter? More than half of students say they've experienced sexual assault at uni, stuff like inappropriate touching and forced intercourse. A couple of weeks back, I chatted to 4 girls who say they were sexually assaulted, raped at uni.
I wanted people to honestly just know, these are disgusting people.
We can't name them because some of their cases are being investigated by the police. Actually, we can't put anything on this podcast that could influence a jury one way or another if a case ends up going to court. None of the girls I spoke to have gone to court yet. Some did go to their uni and to the police with their complaints, but they all ended up posting about it on social media because they didn't think the authorities were doing enough.
I had gone through a lot, I couldn't leave the house, and it was every time I'd get to uni, I'd see him there, and it would be I'd have to get my friends to walk me to my lectures or library. So I was like, you know what, this isn't fair. How can he just walk around everything's normal? He's just living his life, do you know what I mean? And
everyone's suffering.
Yeah, and as much as the police are dealing with it, it's there's no kind of repercussions for his behaviour. And I was like, do you know what? I don't want this to happen to anyone else.
One of the greatest effects that it's had is it started a conversation.
Yeah.
I've managed to have a conversation with guy friends and then just getting educated on, do you know that's not right?
I just wanted people to know, that it's their friends that are doing this and it's their friends that are ruining other people's lives.
It's still going on. As much as we're near the end of term, it's still going on. There are first year girls that are 18 and it would kill me to know that happened to them or anyone else.
Whether these allegations or other allegations we've seen online are true or not, this episode is pretty dark, and it's also brought up issues about consent, which we'll get into later.
Consent is having a clear understanding of the yes and no.
Went out to the club, one guy approaches me and then he's forced himself onto me, trying to dance with me.
My generations and generations before me weren't really taught what consent is.
I found this episode tough. My name is Linda Adey. This is The Next Episode.
I would say that sexual harassment and assault is the biggest issue facing women students on higher education campuses across the UK currently.
That's Sarah Lasoya. She's the Women's Officer at the National Union of Students, an organisation that looks after people at uni. She spoke at the Women's Conference in Bristol this week. She reckons that unis aren't doing enough to support students who say they've been sexually assaulted on campus. We've spoken to a load of unis, but more from them in a bit.
If you've been raped, we have to focus on the act that's been done, not how the girl got there.
Last month, students across the country tweeted their stories of harassment, sexual assault and rape. There's been over 15,000 retweets and so many people have come forward with stories. Me and the guys here at The Next Episode have counted 7 unis involved on Twitter so far. Sarah understands what those girls we heard from a second ago are talking about. She thinks that students have felt forced to post about their allegations on Twitter.
Students are turning to social media because they don't see a place where their experiences will be listened to, validated and dealt with effectively. So we see students sharing information, overwhelmingly women students sharing information about abusive relationships that they've been in or perpetrators who they've seen, do or exhibit the same behaviors to people they know time and time again. And I think that is a safety mechanism for so many students. So I think it is an issue that's been present in university academic circles and environments for a very long time. And unfortunately, I don't think meaningful change has really happened just yet.
You grew up inside a dream, alone among the streams of old that float into the city that you call home. You need to go.
We've spoken to so many girls at unis around the country who say they've been sexually assaulted or raped, and most of them agree with Sarah. They think universities need to step up the amount of support they offer alleged victims of sexual assault. Here's more from the girls I spoke to.
Universities are a business. You are a number to them. You are exactly 9,000 times 3 a year. I don't believe they provide support.
It needs to be acknowledged as a problem, first of all, because there's so many girls like that have been through this, and it's really not something that's rare or like you're never going to be the only one, and people just act like it's not a thing.
What the unis tend to do is sweep a lot of things under the rug, or they give you a limited time period in which you can come for support. They've made it a lot harder and actually traumatic to actually get support. Not the actual thing that happened to you is traumatic, but the support or the lack of support that you're getting is adding to your PTSD.
Like, if we look at like the vice chancellors of most unis, they're mostly men.
Yeah.
Old white men. And it's like, this doesn't affect you.
So why would it occur to you?
The only reason you're going to care and change something is if it goes to the media and it's going to make your uni look bad. So you're going to get less money, less funding. That's the only time I'm going to see a change, probably from someone in a position of power like that.
Those girls I chatted to about this use the phrase sexual assault. It's a scary phrase, and I've never really thought much about what it means. Looking online at what the police and other authorities say, sexual assault is where someone touches a person sexually and that person doesn't consent to it. Rape is when a guy uses his penis to penetrate the mouth, vagina or anus of someone who hasn't agreed to it. Both rape and sexual assault are illegal, no matter who it happens to. I went to uni a few years ago and I never had any mates who said they got raped. But through making this podcast, I now realise a lot of girls I knew at uni probably did experience some form of sexual assault. And that might have been a guy getting way too close at a rave, or maybe a guy that they were seeing taking it further than they wanted to.
I feel like boys, they come to uni and it's like freedom. I think it's the whole, I can take you back to my parents ain't there.
It's actually the lad culture. No, it's definitely the lad culture because it's literally a breeding ground. Sorry to sound like but it's literally a breeding ground for toxic masculinity.
Boys would be like, who can increase their body count by the most in the first week? Like freshers, everyone thinks freshers, just get drunk and just have sex with as many people as you can.
So those were the voices of the girls that I chatted to again. Basically, the next episode is a new thing here at the BBC. Welcome to our little basement at Old Broadcasting House in London. Hi guys, say hi.
Hello.
Unis are in a position of power, but it's not like they're not doing anything about it at all. Nat and Georgia, you've been speaking to unis, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been trying to get in touch with unis, and also through our research have come across various different things that unis are doing. So some have got helplines for students to call, others have got like online tools so that it's easier to go through the reporting process, and then there are others that offer counselling sessions to victims. All of them seem to encourage girls to report any allegations.
The government's done some stuff too though, Georgia, right? We've got a statement, haven't we?
Yeah, so the government have asked two organisations, Universities UK and the Office of Students, to help sort out these issues of sexual assaults and rape. University UK told us that they set up a task force a few years ago, so 2016, to examine violence against women at university. The Office of Students say they spent nearly £2.5 million tackling sexual harassment, and they say they're making progress as well.
You call me on my phone, you're asking if I'm home. I know what's on your mind, babe.
I had a chat with Nasir Afzal. He used to work at the Crown Prosecution Service, basically the guys who give the police legal advice. He left a couple of years ago, but he says victims should go straight to the police.
The earlier that you involve the authorities, the more likely it is that we're able to collect evidence that would be potentially used in a trial. We know that you don't have to have marks on your body so that you've been fighting and resisting. It comes down to how clear and coherent your account is. It's also about investigating the suspect.
Okay, what's your thoughts on girls, for example, that out their alleged abusers online, like on social media?
I'm not keen on it myself, I'll tell you why. There are a small number of cases where actually these allegations are malicious. Whenever I mention, for example, we need to do more to prosecute rape, etc., I will always get somebody on social media turning around and saying, but what about the people who've been falsely accused? Actually, the number of people falsely accused is a very small number. We did some research back in 2013, the Crown Prosecution Service did. So 3 out of 1,000 of allegations we had prosecuted were actually malicious. I would rather people use the authorities and do it the proper way rather than have trial by media or trial by social media, because quite frankly, no justice is actually delivered. Nobody goes to prison because of social media.
A lot of the girls that I spoke to as part of this episode felt like going to the police just wasn't an option. Do you understand, though, why they feel like that?
100%. 100% I understand, which is why I also suggest that you go and seek help from all the various women's groups that are out there, the support groups that are out there. They can provide you with that level of support. They can go with you to the police, for example. They can go with you to any meetings that you need to have. They can provide you with trauma and counselling support, because you need all of that. It does not go away when a case is finished. So we need to recognise that it's not just about policing, it's about a whole society approach. But it's also about challenging guys. We need to be doing a great deal more to educate young men, and particularly young men, but even older men, of course, about what their responsibilities are.
Lizzie is probably right. There's so much learning to do when it comes to consent. It's something I'd like to look into in another episode. So what is consent?
Consent is having a clear understanding of yes and no. I've definitely seen situations where consent may have not been given.
I'll be in a club and me and my friends are just trying to have a dance, and there's a group of guys or just one guy making us feel really, really uncomfortable. They presume because you try and ignore them and carry on with your fun, that means permission for them to get closer and inappropriately say something or touch you.
Went out to the club, one guy approaches me and then he's forced himself onto me, trying to dance with me, tried to touch me inappropriately while trying to dance on me, and I instantly pushed him away.
You'll then turn around to them and be like, whoa, what are you doing? They'll say, oh, you didn't say anything.
My generations and generations before me weren't really taught what consent is.
They expect you to turn around and physically say no, and I think, to be honest, a lot of the time, even if you did turn around and say no, they'd still do it and pretend they didn't hear you or they misunderstood.
It's not uncommon to see situations that sometimes look or seem uncomfortable or sometimes just look outright wrong. The likelihood is that if it's uncomfortable to watch, something's not right.
I had a good chat with students Jonathan and Kemi that I met at a uni event about consent. They've been following the posts on social media. It just feels like there's so many dilemmas we're trying to work through, in lectures, in the club, all over basically. So what would you honestly do if you saw a friend of yours trying to touch somebody or talk to somebody that had made it clear they were not interested?
I'll just be like, bro, she doesn't want it, man.
You have to go and cock block.
Yeah, she doesn't want it, man.
Yeah, you have to just go like, alright, what are you guys doing?
You're right,
I come get a drink. Come get a drink with me. Come. Love you. Pull him quickly, and then when you're walking, that's when you talk to him quickly.
Have you done that though?
But I feel like it's always when people are drunk, especially my friends, because that's obviously when you lose your senses, sort of. I've been in that situation where I've seen like one of my female friends, like a guy tried to come and dance with them, and she really doesn't want it. Yeah. You just have to come and pretend to be their boyfriend, like, look, yo.
Really?
Gonna have to let go of my girl, man.
I've seen it so many times. I'm sure you've seen it. Yeah. Like, when that happens to females as well, the girl feels so uncomfortable, look back, it's just man. It's as soon as she does the twist, the whole neck turn 180, you know it's time. She doesn't want to. And I feel like it's situations where like that, like if the guy even doesn't understand like simple body language as well, then it becomes an issue. Like, where do you cross the line now? Like, you know, guys with the nice cars pulling up in that Audi 19 plate. It's a rental, by the way.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, disclaimer. You know them ones. It's almost like, oh yeah, I've got a nice car. Of course she's gonna want me. But what if at that moment the girl still says no? Then it's an issue.
That's when it becomes a pride issue.
Pride.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Kemi. Like I say, we'll come back to this one. So if you've got something to say about this, you can get us on WhatsApp. 07568 608 295. Sexual assault at uni isn't a new thing, but outing alleged abusers on social media is. And the message is clear. This is probably the biggest issue facing female students right now. To me, it feels like we're in a pretty sad place. The women I've spoken to feel there's such a lack of support from unis and the police that they think the only way to get some kind of justice is to take their complaints online. There's obviously work going on at different unis and by university bodies, as well as the police and the government. But the question is it enough? And probably more importantly, is it good enough? Let's see what happens on the next episode of this one. Also, before we end, if you're a student and you think you've been sexually assaulted, please report it to your uni and to the police. If you've been affected by issues raised in this podcast, help and support is available. Just search BBC Action Line. Thanks to everyone involved in today's pod. If you want to get in touch with us, we're using the hashtag TheNextEpisode, and you can email us thenextepisode@bbc.co.uk. And we do mean it. We want to keep this conversation going. As ever, all the tunes have come from BBC Music Introducing. I'm loving this one. Bella Never Loved. She's from Chelmsford in Essex. Bella is playing Radio 1's Big Weekend on the BBC Introducing stage. That's happening this weekend.
My diary's always the paper. You gon' hit me now rather than later. Been too nice for too long. Been too right to do wrong. See, let me tell you about this man, He showed me love and then he ran from me. He didn't know that I'm a baddie. I think I hate him like my daddy. And still I got nothing to show for it. Wasted time, broken heart, nothing to show for it. I caught a body, he caught a body. Now I ain't got nobody. You gon' make me call somebody. Nothing to show for it. Wasted time, broken heart, nothing to show for it. I caught a body, he caught a body. Now I ain't got nobody. You gon' make me call somebody. I know you're calling me crazy, no. But I can't help myself, I just lost my baby. Don't act like you never loved, never loved. Act like you never loved, no. Act like you never loved, never loved. You never loved, never loved. My diary's always the paper. Homeboys yelling out, don't save her. I don't wanna be safe. If it's from you, baby, no way. And I know messaging won't do it. How am I supposed to get to you when you turn your red receipts off? You must think I'm foolish. Still I got nothing to show for it. Wasted time, broken heart, nothing to show for it. I caught a body, he caught a body. Now I ain't got nobody. You gon' make me call somebody. Nothing to show for it. Wasted time, broken heart, nothing to show for it. I caught a body, he caught a body. Now I ain't got nobody. So tell me why he lied. Told me that I was everything he got, and now he got nothing to say. Swore all my life, boy, I nearly died. I'm gonna make it a double homicide. Now I ain't got nobody. Tell me what I did to deserve it, baby, please. I caught a body, he caught a body. Now I ain't got nobody. You gon' let me call somebody. I know you're calling me crazy, no. But I can't help myself, I just lost my baby. Don't act like you never loved, never loved. Act like you never loved, no. Act like you never loved, never loved. You never loved, never loved. Act like you never loved, no. Never loved.